Hey guys, are you looking for your license to print money in the GTA? Well, with some of these municipal zoning changes, they're allowing for up to 5 units is going to be your ticket to success.
Hey guys, Josh and Ehren back for another Finance Friday, and in today's video we're going to touch on something that you probably heard from an investor in Toronto. If you've been talking to them, it's the 4-unit plus an ADU, essentially 5 units in the GTA now. It's kind of a buzz topic that's going on, and we want to discuss about the specifics around how you finance it and the intricacies around what you need to do to be able to acquire or to build, and then how you can transition into long-term debt. There's a lot of questions around it right now, so we wanted to dive in and give you guys an update as to how to do this properly from the onset.
Yeah, we've already touched base on municipal zonings and allowing for up to 4 units. Essentially we're tacking onto the same premise, but the nice thing about this one is we're 5 units now if we're looking at the GTA, which means now we qualify for commercial and potentially CMHC type financing, which is a bit of a game changer when you're looking at just financing one lot compared to having to buy these side-by-side lots, which is obviously a little bit less money when you're buying one property. The potential here is quite significant. It's going to allow for a lot of creative options on the back end for sellers to be able to exit into projects, potentially sell assumable mortgage and carry long-term cheap debt to be able to keep these projects affordable, and then what some of these sellers are doing in terms of condo conversions.
Yeah, let's get into it. So the specifics around, acquiring a pre-existing building, first of all. It's important to understand when you're looking at acquiring a building or a piece of land, you want to understand actually the takeout financing on the back end. It's kind of a weird concept, but if you understand what your final goal is going to be, you're able to plan out how you're going to acquire the asset, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody accidentally acquire incorrectly, and then your takeout financing is all messed up and you have to wait an extra 2 years. So, acquiring the asset, let's get into the difference between a pre-existing building and new construction. So the idea is you'd purchase a fourplex and you'd add an ADU in the back, or you'd purchase a triplex, you'd add a garden suite, and then you'd add an ADU, essentially creating 5 legal units. Now, it's really important that these units are legal with the city, because the only way you're going to get your takeout financing is if all the units are legal. But essentially the idea is to create the 5 units somehow. Now, if you're purchasing a property and the property is pre-existing, a pre-existing property is a property that has 4 walls and a roof on it. There's no gray area here unless you're transitioning from a commercial aspect into a residential aspect, but all in all, you're probably buying a residential house. If it has the 4 walls and you're using the 4 walls and it's got a roof on it, this is a pre-existing building. Even if you're building a brand new structure off the back, CMHC on the back end is going to see this as a pre-existing building. Now, it's important to keep in mind that pre-existing buildings have different requirements when it comes to the back-end financing and how you go about using your energy or getting your energy efficiency points. We're going to get to that in a second. Now, new construction, the classification of new construction is exactly as you would think. Ground up new construction. You can't use any of the pre-existing structure. It has to be brand new from the ground up. At that point, CMHC classifies this as a brand new building. Really important to understand the difference between building, pre-existing, and new construction.
Yeah, and just to touch base on that too, even if you tear down a wall and you're adding on units, this doesn't consider as new construction either. You're adding units and you're adding value, but again, in the eyes of CMHC, ground up, like Josh said, is tear that structure down and build right up from scratch. Taking a look at how MLI Select specifically qualifies, since it is a point-based structure, your standard CMHC, you don't really have to worry about the intricacies of financing. It's just, is the income there to be able to support your 1.2, your 1.3, depending on your term. But when we're looking at MLI Select, obviously it's point structured, and those points do change based off of a new construction versus a pre-existing building. And it's huge, especially if you're taking a look at affordability, which you may not be and probably not using in Toronto, but it is significant. And then taking a look at your energy efficiency, a pre-existing building, you're looking at increasing the efficiency above that pre-existing level. Whereas on the new construction, you're just looking at being percentages above code. So there is a big difference. It's a little bit easier as well too when you're doing on the new construction. Obviously, you can come in with a set game plan, strategically set up your HVAC and your utility components versus on those pre-existing buildings. Sometimes things just aren't set up properly. Your plumbing stacks, your HVAC systems, like where is everything placed in the building? The cost to be able to go in and redo this pre-existing can be sometimes quite substantial, just given what needs to be done to the property. So, definitely a lot of advantages when we're taking a look at qualifying for the points here, doing a brand new build versus going into a pre-existing building.
Yeah, so let's say you want to buy a property and you want to build the ADU and the garden suite in the back. You buy your triplex in the GTA. You want to throw that garden suite on. You want to throw the ADU in the back to get your 5 units. How do you do this to be able to move into CMHC without waiting is the question I'm always getting. So really important to understand the requirements from CMHC on the front end. So when you're purchasing this property, you need to be with an NHA approved lender. An NHA approved lender means National Housing Association. Now there's a list online, you can find it where it is, or you can just call us and we'll be able to tell you what lender to use. For the acquisition, it's really important that you use this type of lender to purchase the property. Now also important to realize that if you have a construction component or a renovation component built into this loan, this is going to hinder your ability to refinance until 2 years after the very last tranche of capital is given to you. So what we're seeing most people do is acquire the building with an NHA approved lender, self-fund the renovations and the construction of the ADU in the back. This is a really important step because if you don't do this, you're going to be stuck waiting 2 years after the last tranche of capital is given to you, which can come as a shock to people if you're in higher interest debt. You have to hold that for a longer period of time, which is going to affect the profitability on your actual project. So what we're seeing is, clients who are doing this right now, it's not a little bit of capital. If you're looking for a major renovation and adding a unit and then adding an ADU in the back, ADUs in GTA are running like $300,000 right now. So you're looking at about $500,000 reno. I know a lot of people don't have access to that in cash, but what most clients are doing is they're using other assets to be able to access that capital, whether it's restructuring a first mortgage on another property, getting a second mortgage, using a line of credit, cash reserves. Anything that doesn't necessarily have to do with the property itself is where the hiccup lies, because CMHC is becoming really strict on paying out any sort of renovation capital or non-NHA approved debt. So if you are doing a pre-existing building and you're looking to fund the renovations, make sure it's coming from your own sources, and make sure it's not on the actual property itself.
Yeah, it's super important. I mean, you take a look at a construction loan, you could be 12 months in, 18 months in sometimes, depending on how complex it is before that last draw. And again, that means you're 18 months and now having to wait another 24 months. You could be 3.5 years into this before you're able to exit onto CMHC debt. So, working with someone who understands the structure, super important. In terms of financing, like Josh said, the problem with trying to get construction financing or renovation loans is these loans are so small. $500,000. What are you going to put it on? How are you structuring it? There's not a lot of options in terms of getting a specific construction loan on the project. We're going to be looking at second mortgages or restructuring debt in other properties. That restructuring of the other debt doesn't matter how we do that. We can use a private second with a non-CMHC approved lender. We can get you that funds quick and be able to put that towards it. Again, the key component here is making sure it looks like the money is coming from your own resources and you're not borrowing it. Because like Josh said, they're not paying this out. We're not able to refinance your property to pay back renovations. You can only refinance to do renovations. So there's some changes in the CMHC and how they look at that debt structuring and what that means for you structuring your capital.
All right, let's dive into building from the ground up. Now, building from the ground up doesn't have as many restrictions as you would normally have with the pre-existing building. So for ground up construction, CMHC does not require you have an NHA approved lender to pay it out when the project is complete. Now, there's two differences when you're looking at pre-existing versus new construction. New construction, CMHC is going to pay out up to 95% of the cost for the project itself. That's including your land acquisition, your soft costs, your hard costs, your carrying costs. Whereas building or renovating a pre-existing building, you're going to be able to access up to 95% of the current value of the asset. Two very different metrics, so just keep that in mind. Now, usually we don't see a whole lot of projects that are qualifying at 95% of the cost. It's kind of a buzzword. People love to say it, they love to look at it, but realistically the income that needs to be generated on a property like this, especially a costly one in downtown GTA, it usually doesn't service at 95% of the cost to build. But essentially the goal here is to access or to recuperate as much capital as possible to hold this asset long term. And a lot of the players who are looking to implement this strategy in the GTA right now, they're not looking at it as make money right now. They're looking at it as a long-term play. How can I create usually 5 decently nice units to be able to cash flow, to be able to access the capital, get myself back, and then go do more. I haven't seen a person just want to do one of these. I'm seeing people try to do it at scale in downtown right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, like construction really is a forward-thinking type project. We're not looking at your immediate 1 year value. We're looking at 5 to 10 years down the road and the opportunity that's coming with the situation that is Canada's rental and housing environment. We're in such a great need and a great demand, and taking a look at a 5-unit building or a 5-unit portfolio and how that's assessed from an income approach and cap rates. It's going to create some long-term value down the road as we see rates starting to come back down and these cap rates starting to shrink a little bit as well too. Your project value is going to go up. So I mean, you have a few different options, right? You can keep it as just 5 residential units, or we're having conversations with some investors that are taking a look at doing condo titles, which means down the road, as these housing values come back up and your comps are there, you could potentially sell these off individually and recoup some of your profit there. So, a lot of cool options with the 5 units. Gives you access to CMHC, long-term cheap carrying debt. In the meantime, you're not sitting at 7-8% debt. It's you're back into the high 4s, maybe 5s, depending on the loan size. So the options that are here are really great and really creative. In terms of type of financing, again, when you're taking a look at CMHC construction financing, if you can get it, I've had some questions from investors. What happens if I buy the land with a non-NHA approved lender? Well, if you're going directly into CMHC construction financing, it doesn't matter who's on title, but it does matter if you're exiting out of repositioning debt going into CMHC. That's when that matters. So again, depends on the type of construction loan that you're getting and the type of repositioning loan that you have and what you're looking to exit into. I've also had some questions about, hey, if my building doesn't qualify for 95% of the construction, can I refinance it on the exit? The thing with construction financing, specifically on CMHC construction, is that you're already qualifying with 100% of your best, perform building, right? Like you're using your top rents, you're using your expenses. If you can't qualify for 95% on the construction, you're not going to qualify for 95% on the takeout financing. There's no difference. We're using the same numbers to qualify. CMHC construction itself is a convertible note. So there isn't also an opportunity for a second refinance. That construction just converts into your takeout debt, versus if you were to do construction with a MIC or something like that, there is that opportunity for refinancing. But again, when we're submitting for the construction, you're putting your best foot forward. All your top numbers should be there. So there shouldn't be an opportunity to increase on that refinance.
Yeah, and it kind of trips people up because they're like, well, I want it on my value. And it's like you're actually qualifying at the absolute maximum loan amount you can anyways. So there really isn't a difference, other than just the difference between the loan to cost and loan to value, but realistically you're qualifying for the same loan. It's not going to change. Now, last thing, really cool part about this 5-plex opportunity that's come up is outbuildings and how outbuildings have been always a challenge for value. So, if you have built an ADU in the back of your property, you probably realize that a residential appraiser isn't going to give value to these things called outbuildings. These outbuildings, are predominantly sheds. They're predominantly now ADUs. And the challenge with most investors recently has been that determining value with these types of additions to your property has been an issue with conventional lenders, especially lenders at the big banks, because they don't necessarily add in the value that you put into it. When you've invested $300,000 into basically an additional house, that can be a problem. Now, because we transitioned to 5 units instead of these smaller units, these triplexes, 4-plex kind of mix. These 5-unit builds, or these 5-unit pre-existing buildings, allow us to be able to look at it through an income approach as well as a direct comparison approach, which allows us to be able to determine like a true value and to get a much higher value than you would normally have with residential financing. So, this transition between 5 units in the GTA is a massive opportunity. I've talked to a handful of investors who are looking to do this at scale downtown Toronto or in the GTA area. And I think that the opportunity right now to be able to effectively do this, it's coming at people faster than they think. So understanding the financing options that are available to you and the steps you need to take to do it properly. And I can't stress this enough, is just doing it properly from the onset understanding what type of capital you need to purchase, how you can go about renovating, how you go about constructing, how you go about holding it long term, and how you're going to exit at the end. All important things to discuss with your mortgage advisor. So if you guys do have any questions at all, Erin and myself are always available. This is kind of a new trend, and we are the experts at helping people navigate this, and we're hoping that we can help the GTA grow with this new trend and help you guys exit into CMHC or conventional financing, whatever you need. Now, if you guys like this video today, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It allows Erin and I to make more videos like this for you. If you did have any questions, comment in the section below, and we will see you guys next time.